Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Fizz here once again. So this is going to be a build diary for a Spark Inquisitor named Physics Santa Man Neck Man. So this is my league starter in my Merry Fizmas private league. If you don't know what that is, I would just suggest you check the last video uploaded to this channel. I'll also link to it down below because it's going to take a bunch of preamble to really explain what it is. A quick TLDR, meta skills are banned. It's like group HCSSF and you share everything, and that's pretty much it. If you want to know the like nitty gritty details, again, check out the video, but that's basically the TLDR. The private league, it's like a group HCSSF thing. So, Spark Inquisitor, how is this? Basically, if you remember, if you had seen the video that I uploaded when 3.17 was coming out, I had a list of build diaries that I wanted to do. EK and Spark were at the top of that list. I ended up sticking with Ethereal knives for a really long time and trying to like push that build a lot. Did a lot of different variations of it until I was happy with what I got. And after playing EK for like, 3.5 weeks, I kind of didn't want to immediately jump in and do Spark because Spark and EK are going to be built pretty similarly just by nature of how the spells work. And they're also going to play pretty similarly just by nature of how the spells work. So I didn't want to immediately jump in and do Spark directly after EK, so I decided to wait for the private league to try it out. And initial thoughts, I'll go through before I get in the passive tree and anything. My initial first impressions, leveling was a blast. Leveling was really fun. I would definitely say it's a lot smoother to level with than EK, which is a given considering I do also recommend leveling a Spark if you want to in my EK guide. So, I mean, lived up to expectations there just by nature of the skill being able to do multiple instances of damage, from one cast, right? Which EK can never do. So the single target felt a lot smoother and stuff while leveling, and you could kind of just like throw them out. It's almost like a dot skill in a way because you'll kind of like just throw them out and then they'll just like bounce around and you keep running and then it'll kill things behind you. So it was pretty comfortable for leveling. However, early maps and stuff, I actually stopped liking it almost completely. I was actually looking at like different builds to reroll to yesterday. I was actually having just like no fun on it whatsoever. I was surprised at how bad it felt in early maps. I think it feels okay, and I think if you were to play Spark, you would enjoy it. It's just after playing so much EK, it felt really, really bad comparing like the intro mapping EK experience to the intro mapping Spark experience, because like I said, they are pretty similar. EK just felt a lot better to me early on, like a lot better to me early on than Spark. But I ended up sticking with it. I was this close to rolling low life bleed EQ glad, but stopped at the last second, went back to Spark and kept farming. I do have a few builds that I want to do some build diaries for. One requires absolutely insane gear. Hopefully I have time to do that before the league ends. League's going for another 17 or so days. It just started. It's a 20-day league. Maybe I'll extend it this league. Who knows? We'll see. Not playing in Gauntlet, by the way. So, let's get into it. So, first and foremost, I'll go over a quick TLDR for leveling with the tree. Basically, it's going to look almost identical to what it is now. The only exception is that these 4 points, this travel node, and these 2 life nodes, I did not take. I simply went up and to the right and rushed Ellie Overload and then linked my tree from the top side. Because I just wanted Purity of Flesh and Sovereignty, right? And you want to take EO. You don't care about crit nodes while leveling, so you don't care about these nodes, you don't care about these nodes, and you don't care about these nodes, right? And then from there, you kind of just take what you want. You want the cast speed early and the lightning mastery. While leveling, lightning damage with non-critical strikes is lucky. That mastery is pretty strong. It will increase your damage pretty free. Once you grab EO, you can go down here and, there's like Ellie Res. It kind of just depends what you want. You can kind of go wherever you want. Most of the stuff on the tree is going to achieve the same stuff. It's like you can go for life and a little bit of Ellie damage and Ellie Res here. You can go for life here. I did take quick recovery while leveling to get some mana regen. But it's kind of like whatever you want to do. There's not a whole lot to the build for the most part. It's just a lot of life nodes and then like generic lightning nodes, and then like later on you'll put in crit nodes. It's pretty basic, honestly. Not a whole lot to it. I do have 1 spell suppression cluster here to go for spell suppression cap. That's pretty much it. The tree overall is fine. I haven't gotten an Anoint yet. The Anoint's going to be the same that I recommend in EK. Fury Bolts, this node is crazy. I think it's just really, really strong for this build in general. It's a really, really good like budget node. I think everything I said for the most part, I think would apply to this build as well in my EK guide in terms of like Anoints. If you want to go like higher like clear speed, going for this proj speed and proj gaining damage as they travel would be good. Or if you want just more damage, you can go for Divine Judgment since you don't really path down there in this build. Or you can just stick with Fury Bolts. It's a, you know, it's a happy medium between the two, and it's cheap. And yeah, like 2 Verdants and a Teal is really easy to get. You get basically 20% increased crit chance from the 20 strength due to your Ascendancy, 20% increased proj damage, and most importantly, 20% projectile speed. Proj speed's a lot harder to get on Spark than EK. EK, I made a point to get a lot of it wherever I could, simply because it's more important. You're scaling like a projectile, and projectile speed is AoE for ethereal knives, right? So you need to get some of it to increase your AoE. Whereas like the equivalent for Spark is going to be Pierce and Duration, funnily enough. So we do grab a 1 Duration node here with the Mastery for, again, more skill effect duration. Because the base duration is 2 seconds. Ours is up to 3.2 basically. So the longer they stay out and the more Pierce you have, the more damage you're going to get from it. This increases not only your potential clear, but also your potential single target damage. Because Spark, after it bounces, can hit the same mob again, right? So like if I throw out these sparks, or if I were to throw out 1 spark, right, which is going to be 2 because of Spell Echo, each one of these, like, it can hit the boss on the way out, bounce off the wall, come back, hit the boss again, bounce off the wall up here, travel back down. It's assuming enough duration in Pierce, you can just keep them bouncing around forever, right? Of course, because Pierce is so much more important and is actually technically a more multiplier in, to our damage, because we can get multiple instances of damage from 1 cast, Pierce stays in this build instead of getting replaced later on by a different support. So we do run Pierce support in this build, which gives us 4 Pierce, and then scaling the duration as well. So we have 4 additional Pierce and a duration of 3.2 seconds. So I guess at this point, which I probably should have started the video with, but whatever. I'm kind of like in mid yellows. As you can see, my HP, like my raw HP is pretty low. I did not farm foothills. I simply didn't want to. So I didn't in the private league. So I don't have a Gravicious craft or anything like that yet. My gear is iffy. It's not super good or anything. So I'm around mid yellows. I did finally get my Elrion craft last night. I've basically just rushed mostly Syndicate stuff to get as many unveils as I can. Gravicious still isn't on my board, so that really sucks. But yeah, like my top priority for now is just getting the Gravicious craft. I may not go into red maps at all until I get Gravicious craft. We'll have to see. But basically it's pretty smooth for mapping. You will notice that the Spark is quite slow, and it will stay that level of slowness until I can at least get Fury Bolts. So base Spark, if you don't know, with quality it does get proj speed, if I'm not mistaken. Let me actually double check so I'm not talking out of my ass. Yes, it does get proj speed. So with a qualityed Vol Spark, which is not very hard to get, honestly, but with a qualityed Vol Spark and running Fury Bolts, that's 40% proj speed. That will make your Spark much, much faster. This is one of the things that did contribute to like early mapping feeling kind of bad though, especially early on when your damage isn't very good. They're moving super slow. It takes multiple bounces to kill things. It could feel pretty bad, honestly. So I think proj speed is actually pretty important for Spark, for it to just feel nice. Like this is fine. Like this is more than fine, as you can see. But it really, like, in terms of like it being like a clear monster, it doesn't really ramp up until you get that proj speed. Now the single target is really good. It's really comfortable. Like I said before, it doesn't take nearly as much investment as EK does, just because of the way the skills functionally work. Because you can get multiple instances of damage off of 1 cast of Spark, the single target will always feel more comfortable on Spark. That also pairs with the fact that Spark feels, like I said earlier, very much like a damage over time skill, especially when you're like talking about like single target, right? Because while like fighting a boss, or in this instance like a Rippy Essence, you can kind of just like cast and run, And then those sparks will continue to bounce around and damage the monster even when you're running and not actively casting. That is one massive advantage I would say Spark has over EK when it comes to bossing. My personal and my viewpoint may change, but this is what I've asked people who have asked me to compare EK to Spark. Granted, I have played a lot more EK than Spark at this point. I think undeniably the ceiling for single target is going to be much higher on Spark than it is with EK, just because again you can get multiple instances of damage from one cast. It's incredibly hard to compete with. However, for clear, I think EK has a higher ceiling than Spark, simply because the way projectile speed works. So Spark has to travel on the ground, right? It is a ground, like Lightning Strike. It is a ground targeted projectile, meaning it'll get caught on stones. It can't go over cliffs, things like that. And when you scale enough projectile speed first most and Pierce second most on EK, it's really hard to compete with, even though you do have to stop to cast every time and you don't have the residual damage bouncing around. But it can go so far and it's basically instant. You don't have to wait on the travel time. So you can like clear a whole screen, teleport, clear a whole screen like instantly, very fast, right? So I think overall, if people really wanted me to like compare the two, Spark is gonna have a way easier time with single target, whereas EK is gonna have a way easier time with like actual just clear. Both are incredibly strong. I think both are worth playing. Right now, again, this is all subject to change. Right now, my preference leans towards EK, just because I tend to like that instant damage. But that may be, again, that may change once I get more proj speed on the Spark, because that is currently the thing that I don't really like about the build. I will say the residual like damage over time kind of aspect of it feels really nice, though. It's very comfortable, because playing EK, you could get into some like uncomfortable spots where it's like, this essence monster is running me down like a truck. I don't want to stop to cast because he's like smacking me super hard. So I kind of just like wait for tornado to come out, hit the tornado, and then like run away a little bit, you know. So you could get into awkward like situations like that with EK. It's a lot harder to get into situations like that with Spark, just because, yeah, they just go everywhere and last forever. But yeah, so far the build's been really fun. That was like a little map showcase, just a T6, whatever. Like I said, I think the highest tier I've done on this character up to now is tier 9, so I've not yet done red maps on this character. The league is 3 days old, but I've been pretty busy with the IRL stuff, so I haven't really played a whole lot. As you can see, level 87 after 3 days. Typically, I'm over level 90 in the first day of a league start, so you can tell I've been going like super casual. But that's good, because it should mean that the build diaries won't be like super, there won't be like massive leaps between each diary entry, which I try to avoid, where it's like, hey, this is a character right when I get to maps, and then 2 days later the next update is like after 50 hours of playtime, you know what I mean? And the character is like, hey, this is my character killing Maven, you know what I mean? Sometimes with them they've been like massive gaps in the gearing process, so I want to try to avoid that. So what's up with the gear? Okay, we'll go over the gear first. This wand is pretty nice. It's not the best, but I would say it's a good starting wand. It's over 100% spell damage. It is a tier 2 flat lightning dispels roll. It gives me some spell crit, and it gives me cast speed that I bench crafted on. Not perfect, but a decent starting wand for sure. I'll probably hold on to this until I can craft something in red maps on a decent eye level base. Moving on to my chest piece. This chest piece is just whatever. I picked up like a random 6 socket on the ground, used a harvest 5 link craft on it, threw like, I only had a few essences at the time, threw them on until I got something with some life and some res. And that's what you see now. This is going to be replaced very soon, hopefully, this and the shield actually, because I need to finish capping my spell suppression. Now that I've gotten evasion pieces everywhere else, the chest piece will be the next thing to go. In the helmet slot, this is a pretty decent helmet. The only thing that's kind of holding it back is it doesn't have any resists on it, but it is a tier 2 life roll. It does have 16% spell suppression, and it had an open suffix for the focus craft, which I will cover when I go over the gems. So shield, I'm just using On's Heritage. I dropped it, whatever. It's, you know, it's +2 max res with some decent life on it, some decent armor, some decent chance to block. It was just better than any shields I had at the time. And, you know, 2 max res is going to be good until I can roll a Cardinal Shield with a good life roll and a good spell suppression roll. Moving on to the boots. Again, just okay boots. They have tier 1 life, I believe that is on boots. Yeah, tier 1 life with some decent spell suppression. Actual pretty decent regen, flat regen roll. Good movement speed roll, and an open suffix for a chaos craft. If you want to see right now, these are my my resistances rather. Just over cap. My chaos res is just in the green now. So no longer negative. 11% still pretty low, especially with how low my raw HP is right now. Moving on to the gloves, one of the weakest slots for sure. But it is, you know, fire res, chaos res, crafted on the life, and they do have dex on them. And that is very important because currently, if I didn't have these gloves on, I wouldn't be able to equip some of my gear because the dex requirements on this build are huge. This is something also very similar to EK where you struggle with dex a lot, except with EK, because you kind of path down here and you grab nodes over here. This is like another 50 plus dex that you get in the build ish. And you don't path down here on Spark. So you're kind of left still needing that amount of dex, right? Because you run Pierce, which is a full dex gem. So even if you want to use a lower level Sniper's Mark, which is a big damage loss, mind you. Like, as you can see, the difference between a level 10 Sniper's Mark and a level 15 Sniper's Mark is a 5% increased damage difference. And again, this isn't increased damage done, this is increased damage taken. So it's like shock. So that 5% is actually a big deal. And that's only at level 15. And this is 134 dex requirement at level 15. I have 113 dex right now. So as you can see, like, you're going to need a lot of dex and a lot of pieces very likely for this to feel comfortable. And I already have one of the plus 30 nodes allocated. So yeah, dex is going to be a, you know, a pressure point on this build for sure. But right now I need that dex. That's why I haven't rolled over these, and it is giving me a good chunk of chaos res. Now onto the rings. The rings are probably the best things that I have right now. I have a tier 2 life roll on this ring, 11 all res. I got to unveil 19 cold and chaos res. That's over 60 cold res. You know, like 11 to all res, and then almost 20 chaos res on this ring. That's a ton of resistance. Too bad it's not a 2-stone, but it is what it is. Open prefix for Elrion craft. You definitely need Elrion crafts on this build, by the way. I didn't have enough chaos, you know, league start. I didn't have enough chaos to do a double Elrion when I finally got it, so I have a -7 and a -5. I would like it to be as comfortable as possible, 2 -7s at least. I don't think you can get away with 1 Elrion craft on this build, because even with the -7 and a -5, after popping my focus, you can see that I still barely go also if I'm casting Sniper's Mark at the same time. So I think you do need a double 7 Elrion setup to run this build with the current reservations that I'm running. But yeah, this ring's pretty solid. Moving on to the next slot. This ring isn't nearly as good, but it does give me plus 15 to all attributes. Like I said, I'm really struggling on dex right now. Tier 1 life, and then the open prefix for Elrion crafts. But it doesn't give me any res, which is definitely a downside. In the shield slot, we have Ons. Like I said before, it's just 2 max res. It is, you know, whatever. So I get the Cardinal Shield. And the Amulet. The Amulet's actually okay. That's a lot of res, % increased armor, cast speed, open prefix for life. This is pretty strong. I would probably anoint this. I think I would anoint this if I had the oils, but I've only done like 1 or 2 light encounters at this point, so I just haven't, you know, I haven't had the resources to anoint it, but pretty decent. I do have another pretty okay amulet as well, which again, sadly I had to craft on life, but it's a Onyx with a 27 to all attributes roll, 16 to all resistances, and Frenzy Charge on kill. That is another solid amulet. Kind of been playing around with both of them. Biggest reason I'm using this right now is to run some of the other stuff that I've currently got on. I need that those like chunky resistance rolls on the amulet, as you can tell, because I'm just barely capped on fire and lightning as is. So losing like 40% of both would put me in the red. Very last slot's just a belt. It's a really crap belt, to be honest. Like, as soon as I got to maps, I just threw like a few essences, whatever essences I had on a belt, until I got something with resistances. Because what I got to maps on was like a belt that had like 50 life and no open suffixes for resist and no resist on it. So it was super trash. So I had like 2 or 3 essences left, threw them on, got this, and I've been using it since. I definitely do need to get a different belt. Maybe at one point I can grab like a Stygian Vise and throw in a phasing on kill gem in there, so I can, you know, free up a flask slot for myself, because flasks, there's so many flasks I want to run in this build. But yeah, this belt's definitely pretty weak. A lot of this gear is very, very much like early mapping stuff. It's pretty crappy. So we'll get into the gym links now. Real quick here. Flame Dash and Arcane Surge linked with Vortex. Vortex will give us chill on stuff, and then it also will just very consistently proc Arcane Surge, as you can see. I've seen a lot of people running level 5 Arcane Surge. I'm running a level 7, just kind of whatever you're comfortable with. I feel like I can get pretty much 100% uptime on it running a level 7, but if you want to run like a level 4, like a level 4 or a level 5, like a lot of people on the ladder are doing, you could definitely do that. I just don't feel the need to. Moving on to the helmet. So why do I need the focus craft? Basically, it's the same. It's like a very similar idea. What I tried early on with the EK testing. And then eventually I just ended up self-casting the tornado. It is more useful on this build for reasons that I will go over now. First off, you have multiple things you need to place, right? You need to self-cast your mark, and then you also need to use Sigil of Power, because full lightning build, Sigil of Power gives you a bunch of added lightning damage, like tons and tons of damage. So you want to place them down all at once. So focus is really good for that. It also, for Tornado, the way it works, it's very similar to Spectral Helix in the way where with Spark, you can't do this with EK, which is why I think it's less important with EK. But with Spark, you notice you can actually prelay your damage. You can have a ton of sparks out and then hit focus, and then it'll get a bunch more instances. Whereas in the case of EK, you can't prelay damage whatsoever, so you throw out the tornado and then you just try to get as many casts in as you can before it becomes untargetable. Which is also why I don't think you need increased duration on this. It'd be cool if you could use it, but I think Onslaught is actually better in this case, because Onslaught on single target is, you know, it's just a lot more cast speed, which will, I mean, I can't imagine you wouldn't be able to get to 20 stacks on the tornado without increased duration. With how many sparks you can throw down, you know what I mean? And then all the cast speed you get from it as well. And then just like I said before, you're less reliant on Tornado's damage with this build than you are on EK, just because of how the skill mechanically functions. So for now, Onslaught, I may at one point use increased duration instead, but for now I think having Onslaught on single target is really nice. It's something I was trying to fit in for a long time on the EK build and ended up just not having sockets for it. Last one is Power Charge on crit. So this is how you're getting Power Charge generation on single target. Because you have to use Sniper's Mark in this build, basically. I didn't do it on the EK build because the EK build didn't benefit, like, Assassin's Mark was just more damage, just straight up. However, you know, for things like Tornado Shot, for things like Spark, you benefit a ton from Sniper's Mark. Not only is Sniper's Mark like a massive damage increase, but you'll see projectiles which hit cursed enemies split towards 3 additional targets. So the way that works on something like Tornado Shot or on something like Spark is you'll, curse the target with Sniper's Mark, you'll throw in your sparks on them, and then when the spark hits it, it'll fork into more sparks, which, will then generate more instances of damage, because those sparks will go out, they'll bounce off, and then they'll be able to like reactivate, I guess, if that's how you want to like say it. Like, once the spark has bounced off of something, then it will like turn back on and can attack the same target again, if that makes sense. So you'll throw out your sparks, each one of them will like hit the boss, and then from there they'll fork off the boss and they'll become their own instances of spark, and then they can hit the boss again. So it's like you can get way more sparks running Sniper's Mark on single target. It's foolish not to use it. There's no way, I don't think Assassin's Mark would even come close to the damage you can get due to that like kind of shotgunning-esque factor. This is also a very, very strong mechanic on Tornado Shot, because it'll do the same thing where, you throw Sniper's Mark on the boss, you shoot a Tornado Shot at it, the Tornado Shot hits it, and then those projectiles that branch off are actually not the individual projectiles from Tornado Shot, but Tornado Shots themselves, which will then, shoot off more projectiles, which can shotgun the boss. So that's why Sniper's Mark, that's why we don't have Assassin's Mark. Like in EK, I just use Assassin's Mark with quality, which gave me power charge, power charge generation on bosses. Can't do that on this build because we need to use Sniper's Mark because it's too good not to use, so power charge on crit. And thus, that's why no increased duration. Maybe at one point I'll throw out Onslaught, we'll see. Determination, Defiance Banner, Zealotry, not a whole lot to say here. So what a lot of people I've noticed on ladder are running, they're running, what is it called? Frozen Shield Ice Orb. You guys know what I'm talking about. The big glass ice dome that people were running for a long time. I haven't seen anybody use that in a long time, honestly. I've seen a few people on ladder running that in the build. As you can tell, I'm pretty lazy with sockets right now. Since I don't have Gravicius Craft, I haven't even felt the need to try it, because if I throw it down, it's not going to really gain a whole lot of stages, and I'm just not at a, you know what I mean? I'm not at a point where I'm really needing that or anything. So I haven't decided if I'm going to like kind of copy what they're doing for the more defense, or if I'm going to throw in something like what I did on my EK build, and like maybe with this build I'll throw in Wrath for more damage or something like that. Maybe even like a Grace on a Divine Blessing with Life Tap. I think I can fit it in the build pretty easily. So I haven't decided what I really want to use the last of my sockets on yet, since I'm not Divine Blessing Zealotry. If you're wondering why I'm not doing that on this build but I was on EK, it's because for EK, Hatred is more important as an aura. Getting that Fizz, 30% Fizz is extra cold. Obviously it's not a thing in this build because this isn't a Fizz conversion build. This is just pure lightning damage. So we just run Zealotry. I may throw in Wrath at some point because I imagine it's going to be a ton of extra damage. If I don't need the extra damage, I might do something more defensive. I haven't decided, so the sockets are just kind of empty for now, and I'm being lazy with it. In the boots, I just have a Molten Shell, cast when damage taken, typical stuff. Running a Herald of Ice, faster attacks with shield charge, no life tap or anything like that, because again, with this build, you do have the mana to do things, and as you can see, it costs literally nothing with double Elrion craft. So, no reason to life tap it, right? From there, the supports that I have on Spark itself is Spark with Inspiration. This reduces the mana cost. It's basically a must-use. Reduces the mana cost, gives you more crit chance and more elemental damage. Very strong support gem. Spell Echo, Rip Unleash, increased damage support, and Pierce. Our 6th link will be increased crit strikes. Yeah, so again, if you're wondering, people coming over from the EK, why did you prioritize crit strikes over crit damage on your EK build? Simply because we're doing a Fizz conversion build on the EK that was split between multiple different elements. And because of that, we didn't have like reliable ways to ignore or penetrate resists unless we crit all the time. So critting was more important on that build than it is for this build, because our damage was split between lightning and cold on the other build. And if we didn't crit, our damage was getting put against, 2 different types of resistances, and we lost a lot of damage. So on that build, crit strikes and crit multi were basically equal in terms of the damage gained, except crit strikes would just feel a lot smoother to play. So I use that instead. For this build, it's far and away, crit multi is like over double the damage of crit strikes with my current character imported into PoB, so it's like a no-brainer on which one to use. That's everything. As far as the Flask, instant recovery, CB immune Flask. Right now I'm running Onslaught on a Flask because I don't have any ways to automate it. Eventually I would like to get like Onslaught on kill on my boots or whatever, so I can free up a Flask slot, but for now I'm just using a Silver Flask. Increased armor during Flask effect. Doesn't matter where you have it, but it should be somewhere on your belt. Running a Granite Flask, increased duration with reduced effect of curses. This basically makes me curse immune because of the way Consecrated Path works with our Ascendancy with Pious Path. So we have 50% increased effect of Consecrated Ground, and curses already have 50% reduced effect. So with this, it's 75% reduced effective curses, and then we're running a Flask with one, which means we're effectively curse immune as long as we have a Flask up. If the Flask isn't up, we have 75% reduced effective curses. Quicksilver is just maximum charges. It's whatever. It's item level 4. I can't get any good mods on it. I haven't dropped a high level Quicksilver yet. And then Quartz Flask. Basically, I just put increased charge recovery on there. I was low on alterations. This isn't what I want endgame, but this is fine. For the Pantheons, I'm running Brine King for the Cannot Be Frozen. That's why I don't have Freeze Immune on my Flask. Definitely run Freeze Immune on your Flask until you get a Divine Vessel to witness a toll. And Soul of Garukon for reduced effective shock. And other than that, a quick rundown of my Ascendancy choices, which is an absolute no-brainer for the build, right? You go Sanctuary first lab, into Pious Path in second lab, get all of your crazy regen. Basically, you're unkillable at this point in the leveling stage. Get that all the way out first, and then Righteous Providence and Merc lab, which is when you want to transition to crit. Very, age-old thing in PoE. Around your 60s is when you want to start taking crit nodes and transitioning into crit, which will be around Blood Aqueduct area. So typically what I will do on Inquisitors while I'm leveling them is I'll do Merc lab around like 60 to 63-ish. And then also as soon as I grab Righteous Providence from Merc lab is when I will start, unspecking EO and spend those points in crit nodes. Then very lastly, once you do Uber Lab, which I just did at the end of last night, is grab Inevitable Judgment. As soon as you grab this, you will notice a massive power spike for the build because you just don't care about resists anymore. And yeah, everything will just start getting pretty much one-shotted. Map bosses will fall over too. And then the more crit chance you get, and the more crit multi you get, this scales really, really well with crit chance and crit multi. So yep, that's everything. Link to the character's current POB will be down in the description. Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed the first episode. I try to make this a little bit more concise. I haven't done one in a while. I'm out of practice in my build diary rundowns. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Directly after this video goes up on YouTube, I will be playing this same build live over on Twitch. So if you want to come hang out or ask questions, maybe I didn't, answer your specific question or fill all the holes in the build well enough for you, feel free, or if you just want to come hang out, feel free to come over, say what's up, and converse with the people or me. But I think that's everything. Thanks a bunch, you guys. If you do want to join the private league, there's tons of open slots. Even if it fills up, I will buy more slots. Anyone who wants to play, you'll be able to play. Don't worry about it. Just make sure that you either read the rules in my Twitch chat. There's a command !rules, as you can see probably somewhere on the screen. Or go and watch the video where I go over the rules. Just make sure that you're not, breaking them or anything, because if people are found breaking the rules, they won't be able to participate in future private leagues. Just to, we have to enforce the rules somehow. So just make sure if you want to participate, you do read on the rules. It's very basic, it's very simple. There's not a whole lot to it. But yeah, if you want to play, feel free to, go sign up on the page and get started. Everyone's welcome. But I think I'm going to end it here. Thanks a bunch, you guys, once again. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to sub or, give me a like. It does help out the algorithm. If you didn't like the video or you think there's something I can improve on, feel free to leave me a thumbs down and leave a comment. I do read all the comments. And that's going to be the end of the video. So I appreciate you, and I'll see you guys in the next one.